This property reverts to blood family now. Pack your bags and get out. Victor Thorne's voice boomed through what Ilara still considered her living room. Ilara Vance, 37 years old and still wearing the black funeral dress from yesterday, stood in the doorway in stunned silence. She watched as Victor directed his sons, Caleb and Jasper, to carry out her grey-tant's hand-carved bench, the one Felix had loved sitting in while reading his evening newspaper. "You have no right to be here," Ilara said quietly, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding. Victor turned to face her, his weathered face twisted with satisfaction. "No right. This is family property, girl. Always has been, always will be. Felix is gone now, and you're not blood. Simple as that." Ilara realized how naive she had been about the Thorne family's true feelings toward her, watching Caleb and Jasper hauling her belongings toward the front door. The morning after laying her husband to rest, she had returned home from her sister's house to find the locks changed. The Thorne men were treating her home like their personal storage unit. Victor stood in the center, orchestrating the removal of her life as if she were nothing more than a temporary tenant whose lease had expired. "Felix wouldn't want this," Ilara whispered, her hands trembling as she watched them stack her wedding photos carelessly on the porch. "Felix is dead," Victor snapped. "And he was too soft-hearted when it came to you. We told him from the beginning you were only after the family money, but he wouldn't listen. Well, that charade is over now." The words hit Ilara like physical blows, confirming 8 years of dinners where she was tolerated but never welcomed, and 8 years of conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. She had endured being treated like an outsider at her own husband's family gatherings because Felix asked her to, believing his family would eventually come around. Caleb appeared beside his father, breathing heavily from moving furniture. "Most of her stuff is out, Dad. What about the kitchen things?" "Take what's valuable, leave the rest," Victor replied without glancing at Ilara. "She can have until sunset to collect whatever junk we don't want." As Ilara stood there watching them dismantle her life, something cold settled in her chest. They had underestimated her completely, just as they always had. But what they didn't know was that Felix had never underestimated them at all. Ilara's relationship with the Thorne family had been strained from the very beginning. 8 years ago, when Felix first brought her home, the reception was arctic at best. Ilara was a nurse from a middle-class family who had worked her way through school. To Victor and his wife, Sylvie, she was clearly beneath their son, a veterinarian who came from 3 generations of property owners. "She's very practical," Sylvie had said that first evening. Ilara was helping clear the dinner dishes while Felix spoke with his father about expanding the animal sanctuary clinic. Sylvie's tone made practicality sound like a disease. The subtle digs continued through their courtship and marriage. The Thornes never missed an opportunity to mention the daughters of their friends who had gone to private colleges and came from established families. When Ilara and Felix announced their engagement, Victor's first question wasn't about their happiness, but about the prenuptial agreement. "You understand, Ilara, that family property has been passed down through generations," he had stated during their pre-wedding discussion. "The house, the land, the clinic, these things stay within the bloodline. Felix is young and romantic, but business is business." Felix grew uncomfortable during that conversation, shifting in his chair, but Victor pressed on. "Ashley seems like a sensible girl. I'm sure she understands the importance of preserving family legacy." Ilara had nodded politely, trying not to cause problems for Felix, but she was inwardly seething at the way Victor spoke about her, implying she was a gold digger plotting to steal their legacy. They didn't realize Ilara had never wanted their money. She loved Felix for his kindness and dedication to healing animals. Felix saw how his family treated her. He noticed conversations becoming stilted when she joined them. Holiday invitations came with subtle suggestions that she might prefer to work that day. He watched Sylvie rearrange seating at family dinners, so Ilara was always placed at the far end of the table. Most importantly, he heard the comments when they thought he wasn't listening. "Son, you could do so much better," Sylvie had said one Sunday afternoon while Ilara was in the kitchen. Ilara heard every word, That girl is nice enough, I suppose, but she's not our kind of people. Felix defended her. Mother, Ilara is exactly my kind of people. She's caring, hardworking, and she makes me happy. That should be enough. Sylvie replied. Happiness is wonderful, dear, but compatibility matters too. Think about your children, your future. Don't you want someone who can truly be part of this family? The conversation ended, but the damage was done. Felix apologized to Ilara afterward, but she saw a shift in his eyes, a new understanding of how unwelcome she would always be. The moment that changed everything happened 3 months before Felix died. They had attended his cousin Walter's wedding, another family gathering where Ilara played her usual role as the polite outsider. During the reception, Ilara returned from the restroom to find the family huddled in deep conversation about estate planning. When Felix goes, the property comes back to the family, right? Jasper was asking Victor. I mean, she's not actually entitled to anything long-term, is she? Don't be ridiculous, Victor replied, his voice low but clear. Wives get temporary rights, but family property always returns to blood. It's been that way for generations. Ilara will get whatever Felix leaves her in personal effects, but the house, the land, the clinic, that all comes back where it belongs. Caleb nodded approvingly. Good. I was worried we might have legal complications with her involved. The only complication, Sylvie added with venom, is getting her to leave peacefully when the time comes. You know how these types can be when money is involved. The casual way they discussed her future widowhood, planning around Felix's inevitable death, made Ilara's blood run cold. What shocked her most was their complete certainty that she had no legitimate claim to the life she and Felix had built. She slipped back into the bathroom until her hands stopped shaking. When Ilara finally returned, she found Felix chatting with his elderly uncle about new surgical techniques. His face lit up when he saw her, and he immediately pulled her into the conversation. Listening to him discuss wildlife rehabilitation, Ilara realized how much his family misunderstood him. They saw only the successful veterinarian who would inherit property. They missed the man who stayed up all night nursing injured animals and who chose love over their narrow definition of social status. That night, as they drove home, Ilara made a decision. Felix, she said carefully, I overheard your family talking about estate plans tonight. His expression immediately grew serious. What did they say? They seemed very confident about what happens to our property if something happens to you. Felix was quiet for a long moment, then reached over and took her hand. Ilara, I need to tell you something. I've been putting off some important legal matters, but I think it's time we had a serious conversation about our future. That conversation, held in their kitchen, changed everything. Felix poured himself a glass of wine and took a deep breath. I've known for years how my family feels about you, he began, his voice heavy with sadness. I kept hoping they would change, that they would see what I see in you, but after tonight, I realize they never will. Felix, you don't have to, Ilara started. Yes, I do, he interrupted gently. Ilara, my family has been planning for your departure since the day we got married. They've convinced themselves that you're temporary, that you'll somehow disappear when it becomes convenient for them. He stood up, looking out at the garden they had planted together. They're operating under some archaic notion that family property automatically reverts to blood relatives when I die. They have no idea how inheritance law actually works, and they've never bothered to ask about my will. You have a will. Ilara's heart began to race. Felix turned back to her with a steely determination. I've had a will since the week after we got married, but 3 months ago, after that conversation with my cousin, I decided it wasn't comprehensive enough. He returned from his study with a folder thick with legal documents. I've been working with Julian Reed downtown, he explained, recalling the prominent estate attorney. Julian helped him understand something important. My family's assumptions about inheritance are not just wrong, they're legally meaningless. When we got married, I immediately changed all property deeds to joint ownership with right of survivorship. He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. That means everything automatically becomes yours if I die first. But Felix, your family doesn't know this. They have no idea, Ilara whispered. And that's not all, he said, spreading several documents across the table. I've drafted a comprehensive will that leaves you everything. The house, the animal sanctuary clinic, all bank accounts, investments, everything. More importantly, I've included specific language about why I'm making these decisions, he continued, handing her a letter written in his careful handwriting. As Ilara read it, tears began to fill her eyes. To my family, the letter began, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer here to protect Ilara from your cruelty. For 8 years, I have watched you treat my wife as an outsider, someone unworthy of basic respect, let alone love. You have made it clear that you consider her temporary, a problem to be solved rather than a family member to be cherished. The letter continued for 2 full pages, detailing specific instances of their behavior, their assumptions about property rights, and their casual discussions of Ilara's future. Felix had been paying attention to everything. I had Julian witness it and notarize everything, Felix explained. I also had him create backup copies to be held at his office. If anything happens to me, he has instructions to contact you immediately. Ilara was overwhelmed by the thoroughness of his planning. Felix, this is incredible, but why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I hoped I would never need to use it. His expression grew sad. I kept thinking maybe I could bring them around. But after listening to them plan your departure like you're some kind of squatter, I realized they'll never change. So what happens now? Now we continue living our lives, loving each other, and building our future together. But if something happens to me, you'll be protected. They won't be able to intimidate you or steal what we've built together. Ilara asked about the clinic, knowing his family would expect it. The practice is mine, Ilara, Felix confirmed. I bought out my father's share 3 years ago with my own money. He likes to act like he still owns part of it, but legally it's entirely mine, and now it's entirely ours. 6 weeks later, Felix was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim. 6 to 8 months. Felix took the news with characteristic calm, immediately shifting into planning mode. He called Julian Reed. Julian, it's Felix Thorne. We need to expedite those estate documents we discussed. Yes, it's urgent. Over the next 2 weeks, while Felix began chemotherapy, they finalized his will. Julian Reed came to the house 3 times. During the final visit, Julian suggested one more provision. Given what you've told me about your family's behavior, I recommend including a no-contest clause. If anyone challenges this will, they forfeit any potential inheritance entirely. Do it, Felix replied without hesitation. I want Ilara protected from any legal harassment after I'm gone. As Felix's condition deteriorated, his family's behavior became even more telling. They visited frequently, but their conversations focused almost entirely on business matters and future plans for the property. Ilara noticed them taking inventory of valuable items, discussing which furniture was original Thorne pieces, and making assumptions about what would happen next. Ilara dear, Sylvie said one afternoon while Felix was napping, have you given any thought to where you'll live after? Well, afterward. This is my home, Sylvie. I plan to stay here. Sylvie exchanged a look with Victor. Well, of course, temporarily. But long-term, you'll want to find something more suitable for a single woman. This house is really too large for one person, plus the upkeep is expensive. Family property requires family resources to maintain properly, Victor added. Ilara bit her tongue, remembering Felix's instructions not to reveal their legal preparations. Their presumption was infuriating. They were mentally redistributing her life. The worst conversation happened 2 days before Felix died. Caleb and Jasper came to visit, but Ilara overheard them in the hallway. Dad wants to start moving some of the valuable pieces out before the funeral, Caleb whispered. He's worried Ilara might try to claim them. Smart thinking, Jasper replied. We should probably change the locks too, just to avoid any complications. What about the animal sanctuary clinic? Do we need to notify his patients about the transition? Dad's already contacted that new vet in Starlight City. Dr. Harrison is interested in taking over the client list, Caleb said. Ilara stood frozen outside Felix's room, listening to them plan the dismantling of their life while her husband lay dying just feet away. They had no idea every word they spoke further validated Felix's decision. That night, Ilara told Felix what she had overheard. He was weak, but his eyes still flashed with anger. "They're already dividing up our life?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "I'm afraid so," Ilara confirmed. Felix closed his eyes, then looked at her with determination. "Ilara, promise me something. When they come, and they will come, don't let them intimidate you. You have every legal right to everything we've built together. Julian has all the documents, and he knows exactly what to do." "I promise," Ilara whispered, holding his hand. "And don't feel guilty about fighting them," he added. "They've made their choice about how to treat you. Now they'll live with the consequences." Part 6. The Confrontation. Felix died on a Tuesday morning in October. The Thorne family immediately took over the funeral arrangements, pushing Ilara aside as they planned what they considered appropriate for their son. "Ilara dear, you'll sit in the second row," Sylvie informed her the morning of the service. "Family sits in the front row." Ilara nodded quietly, choosing not to point out that she was his wife and closest family. Their behavior provided more evidence of their complete disregard for her place. After the service, Victor pulled Ilara aside at the cemetery. "We'll give you a few days to grieve, Ilara, but then we need to discuss practical matters. The house will need to be cleaned out, and we'll need time to prepare it for Caleb's family." "Caleb's family," Ilara repeated, amazed by his audacity. "He's been wanting to move back to Starlight City," Victor explained matter-of-factly. "The house is perfect for them, and it keeps the property and the family where it belongs." "Victor, that house is my home," Ilara insisted. "Was your home," he corrected. "You were Felix's wife, and we're grateful for the care you gave him, but now it's time for family property to return to family." "I am family," Ilara countered. Victor's expression hardened. "You're not blood, Ilara. There's a difference." The next morning, Ilara drove back to Starlight City. As she turned onto her street, she saw Victor's truck parked in the driveway alongside Caleb's van. She watched through the front windows as figures moved inside. They weren't waiting for permission. They were simply taking what they believed was rightfully theirs. Ilara pulled out her phone and dialed Julian Reed's office. "Julian, it's Ilara Vance. They're at the house now moving things out," she said. "Perfect. Don't go inside alone. I'll be there in 20 minutes with copies of all the documents. Do you remember what Felix told you to do?" Julian asked. "Let them dig their hole deeper," Ilara replied, recalling Felix's exact words. As she waited, she watched Victor direct his sons. They were loading her grey-tant's hand-carved bench into Caleb's van, the chair she had inherited from her own family. That was the end of her politeness. Ilara got out of her car and walked toward the house. She stood in the doorway, watching Victor orchestrate the removal of her life with military precision. "You're back sooner than expected," Victor said, not having the grace to look embarrassed. "We thought you might want to stay away for a few more days while we handle the transition." "The transition?" Ilara asked quietly. "Getting the house ready for Caleb's family," Victor clarified. "Don't worry, we'll pack your personal items separately. You can pick them up once you've found somewhere else to live." Ilara marveled at his absolute certainty. "Victor, I need to tell you something important," she said. "What's that, dear?" "You forgot one crucial thing." Victor's expression shifted slightly. "What do you mean?" Before Ilara could answer, Julian Reed's silver sedan pulled into the driveway. Victor's face went pale as he recognized the prominent estate attorney stepping out of the car with a briefcase. "Mr. Thorne," Julian called out, approaching the front door. I'm Julian Reed, Felix's attorney. I believe we need to have a conversation. I don't understand, Victor stammered. Julian looked around at the furniture being loaded into trucks, then back at Victor with professional calm. It's about the fact that you're currently removing property that belongs to Elara Vance, and you need to stop immediately. Caleb dropped the box he was carrying. What are you talking about? This is family property. Actually, Julian replied, opening his briefcase. Legally speaking, everything you've touched today belongs to Elara. Felix left a comprehensive will, and I have the documentation right here. Jasper stopped loading the truck. A will. But family property always. Family property follows legal ownership, not assumptions, Julian interrupted. And Felix made his wishes very clear. Julian spread the legal documents across the kitchen table. The Thorne men gathered around, their confident expressions rapidly changing to confusion and anger. This will, dated 6 months ago and properly witnessed, leaves everything to Elara Vance, Julian explained methodically. The house, the animal sanctuary clinic, all bank accounts, investments and personal property. Everything. Victor's face turned red. That's impossible. Family property has been passed down for generations. You can't just give it away to outsiders. Mr. Thorne, your son owned this property outright, Julian countered. He could leave it to whomever he chose, and he chose his wife. Sylvie protested. But she's not blood family. Julian pulled out another document. Actually, under Ethelgard law, spouses have automatic inheritance rights that supersede any family traditions. But more importantly, Felix also changed all property deeds to joint ownership with right of survivorship. Even without the will, everything would have gone to Elara automatically. Caleb looked stunned. You mean we have no claim to any of this? None whatsoever, Julian confirmed. In fact, by removing property without permission, you're technically committing theft. Victor slumped into a chair, the weight of his miscalculation finally hitting him. There's more, Julian continued, pulling out Felix's letter. Felix also left detailed instructions about why he made these decisions. He began reading aloud. To my family, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer here to protect Elara from your cruelty. For 8 years I have watched you treat my wife as an outsider. As Julian read Felix's words, documenting years of mistreatment, the Thorne family's faces grew ashen. Felix had been paying attention to everything, every slight, every dismissive comment, every assumption that Elara was temporary. Furthermore, Julian continued, Felix included a no-contest clause. Any attempt to challenge this will result in the forfeiture of any potential inheritance. Victor finally understood the full scope of his son's final act of protection. Within hours of Julian's revelation, the Thorne family faced the complete collapse of their assumptions. Victor was forced to return every item they had removed, including Elara's Greytant's bench that had ended up in Caleb's van. The locks they had changed were replaced at their expense, and they were banned from entering the property without Elara's explicit permission. The animal sanctuary clinic, which Victor had already promised to another vet, remained Elara's to operate or sell as she chose. The family land they had considered their birthright was now permanently outside their control. Their casual planning sessions about Elara's departure became evidence of their complete misunderstanding of both legal reality and Felix's true feelings. Sylvie's hopes of maintaining her social standing were shattered when word spread through their social circle about how they had tried to steal from their deceased son's widow. Caleb's plans to move his family into the family house evaporated. Jasper's assumptions about inheriting part of the clinic cost him the job he thought was guaranteed. Most devastatingly for Victor, the respect he had commanded as the Thorne family patriarch disappeared overnight. People learned how thoroughly his own son had rejected his values and protected his wife from the family's cruelty. The man who had spent decades lecturing others about family loyalty discovered that his son's final act was one of complete rejection of everything Victor represented. As Elara stood in her kitchen that evening, holding Felix's letter and surrounded by the belongings his family had tried to steal, she realized that her husband's greatest gift wasn't the house or the money. It was the validation that their love had been real, that she had been worthy of protection, and that sometimes the quietest people fight the hardest battles for those they love. The revenge was complete, not because Elara planned it, but because Felix had seen his family's true nature years before and had quietly, methodically, built walls around their love that they could never breach.